You can go through now.
Okay, gotta move on.
Hallelujah! Ha ha ha! You did it!
Thanks! Rock and roll!